Gosh.
I know, right? What's up, Chris?
Hi, Chris.
Hmm.
Alright,
All
let me
right, so moving
scroll
on, we
down.
got AlgernonBlue.
Algernon!
Drew this in 2005. Man, that's crazy. 14 years
That's
ago. It's
so
really old.
long ago.
Like to change the pose. It doesn't look as stiff. I'm not sure if I should go with a more semi-realistic art style or an anime style. So we'll show off the original. We got an OG 14-year-old study. It's
Dude,
crazy old.
I'm really excited for this one, Algernon.
Me too.
Especially like the way you've been drawing. So I know you're trying to decide between going more realistic or anime. I love the way you draw anime. Like they
Me
have like
too.
this sort of like really light elegance to it. So I think this particular piece would look badass in your anime style. I did. Hold on, let me pull up the notes really quick. There
You
was
pull
a
up
lot that the what?
you want to pull up the refined the red line?
Did I not do that yet? God, this is so much to manage.
I know. I'm pulling it up right now. So
Okay,
this is
there
the
we
red.
go. There we go. Now
That's
you
the
know
red
what I'm
line right
talking
there.
about. Now you know what
There
I'm
we go.
talking about. Yeah. So I liked a lot of this piece. I think there was a lot to like. My main thing for this one was I think the composition needed to be tweaked a bit. So your original kind of had her like the angling of it sort of tilted to the side. And one thing is when you guys sort of create these floating illustrations, they tend to look a little bit more on the graphic side. Like it's something you could see on a t-shirt,
Yeah.
or on a mug or something like that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Skinny, thank you so much for the host. I hope you're doing well. So, you want to take into consideration when you do something like this, like the overall shape and how well it reads. And so, with your drawing, I actually sort of emulated like a heart shape and rotated it so that she and where her foot comes down sort of makes a very straight line. And the reasoning why for this is because you have two head elements, so it's a nice balance.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
and
yeah.
then
It's
yeah,
visually it's a really cool composition, right?
right.
Like
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. And then one of the other things that I think would be kind of cool is that so since you have one of the faces on behind her as like a 3/4 view, um, and this is sort of just me being I love reflection and yin yang stuff, but I also think it offers like a level of cohesiveness to it. Whereas if
yeah.
you have one head 3/4 view, then you should make the second head 3/4 view because she's almost looking at us straight on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think visually it's a little jarring having one face looking straight on and one face 3/4 and her looking straight on. So I think kind
Mm-hmm.
of like mimicking it doesn't have to be identical like 3/4 perspective on both the background elements, but getting some sort of a turn to the other head to kind of match it would go a
Mm-hmm.
long way right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, I think Pam. I didn't even notice that when we were going over these earlier, but she made a really good point about that heart shape. Like there's like a general kind of swoop of these two heads coming in on here that go
Mm-hmm.
down to a heart, down to her foot, and then if you could actually flip that upside down from where her head is, it actually has like an inverted kind of heart shape too, with the actual natural shape of the hair right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has like a mirrored shape. It's a really good design shape. Um, so I'm actually really excited for that. That's really well done. Um, Spectrum, what's up, dude? And Akil, how you doing, man? What I would say, the other thing too is just define what the actual action is here. Like you have the hand raised up in the air. Pam had a little question mark. Like we didn't actually know what she's doing, so she's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like she was kind of standing there, kind of leaning forward a little bit. One arm was straight down, a little bit of a torso tilt, and like one arm up in the air. But
Mm-hmm.
there's no kind of like concise kind of idea of like what the action is, the feeling is of the piece, like what she's trying to be doing here. So I'd say like is she reaching for something? Is she posing in some way? Like should the hand be doing more of an expression, for example? Just be a little bit more defined what the actual action's going to be right there.
Mm-hmm.
Spectrum, thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. So that definitely the hand sort of like defining the action and making sort of clear as to what she's doing, uh, would definitely be helpful. And then I think, the last part. Actually, maybe James should talk a little bit more about this last part because it kind of has to do with your figure in your original illustration has a slight force perspective to it,
Yeah,
foreshortened perspective to it. And so I kind of did like a rough sort of outline on it, but I think in general, and James, you can kind of
Yeah,
assist
so I
with
mean,
this area, but yeah.
so I mean, you already had an interesting pose in the piece, but yeah, I would play up those elements like what kind of Pam was talking about. Because she is leaning forward. If that's the pose you kind of go for, then you
Mm-hmm.
want to play that up. Overlapping forms, overlapping shapes. Obviously your hips are here. You always start at the bush right there. But like if you're kind of working on the torso, then yeah, like those sort of circular shapes of the torso. Like if you're thinking of the torso as like a bag of flour, the top portion is going to be bending forward, so you can kind of like curve in like the rib cage shapes, the boob shapes and stuff too, and just kind of play up those overlapping shapes and forms. She obviously has pretty large tits, to put it bluntly, right? So I mean, that's if you play up the idea of her leaning forward and emphasizing that feature of her, then that's going to be covering up some of her rib cage. It might cover up a bit of her navel, depending on how far forward she's actually leaning and how much you want to play up that forced perspective. And in turn, like those areas are going to overlap some of like the actual pelvis and hips all together too. So it just depends on how elaborate you want to give this pose, like how much you want her kind of like leaning forward and kind of coming at the camera. But I think her pose in general and defining the action, like we mentioned earlier, will be probably one of the biggest things you can do to improve the piece. Because overall, it's a pretty interesting character in format here, I think. Yeah. That kind of cover all the bases, I think.
I think that covered basically
so?
everything for that one. Yep, we good.
Akil's here. He says he's doing fine. By the way, forgot to post an old piece. It's okay. That's all right.
You can still post if you want.